Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jill Sorensen. I'm the Product Support Manager at MusicMaster. Welcome to our webinar today. The topic is going to be an in-depth look at the rule tree. Before we get to that, just a brief announcement about our webinars. These are listen-only webinars. However, if you do have questions, that GoToWebinar panel that you see on the right side of your screen will have a questions area. You can go ahead and type your question into that screen, and then you will get an answer back during the presentation. If you have any other questions about what we're doing, you can always contact your music scheduling consultant or support at mmwin.com, and we will go ahead and answer the questions or concerns that you have that way as well. So, off to look at the rule tree, an in-depth look at the rule tree, and to do that, here is Marianne Burkett.
Hi, thanks, Jill, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar to take a look at some more advanced areas of the rule tree. Of course, I'm assuming if you're here right now, you have a fundamental knowledge of how to build rules in the rule tree, and in the event you are brand new to MusicMaster, I would encourage you to visit our website and go see some of our webinars that we've done in the past. I did one on the rule tree and some fundamentals of the rule tree, and you can visit our website and click and watch those. You can certainly stick around as well, and you can always call your music scheduling consultant for assistance if you need assistance with any of the things that we're going to discuss. And so welcome to our rule tree webinar. Today we're going to be focusing on day-parting the rules and filtering the rules or categories, storing rules for later use, the use of rule groups, optimum goal scheduling, filtering the rules, and more. So I'm going to start the session out in saying the first thing when you open up the MusicMaster rule tree you might want to check is check the properties of the rule tree. Quite important, especially when you're building rules. And you can do that by clicking on this little icon. Once you've highlighted the MusicMaster rule tree, you can click on this and see your properties. Basically, the all category bypass is what you're most concerned with when you are going through and building rules, because any rules in the all categories area can be bypassed by using this. In my database, I bypass all the rules just for my current category and my non-music, promo, and imaging category. I can also change the appearance of the rule tree and place the individual category rules on top rather than having the all categories area at the top, but I prefer it this way. It's neater, cleaner. So the first thing I'm going to do, we're going to focus on special rule tree items, and that is the rule group. And I'm going to open up my all categories area and show you some examples that I've created for you. Don't be alarmed, it's pretty long and extensive, but I've come up with some samples of rule groups and different scenarios and how you might use them in your day-to-day programming. Now, keep in mind, when you do use rule groups, you have to understand that anything outside of the rule group is tested 24/7. So if you have artist keyword time separation here and artist keyword time separation in a rule group, this is the one that's going to be tested first, okay? So you need to understand that. Now, I've created a couple of different scenarios, and hopefully you'll be able to relate to them. I've got some rule groups day-parted here. I've got day rules, and I've got night rules. And I just want a little different feel and energy from day to night. I kind of want to relax it at night. So I'm going to go to the rule group, day energy rules, right-click, and go to properties. By the way, and let me cancel out of this, to bring a rule group in, as you do with all the rules, you just drag it in, and you'd come up with an empty properties box. But I have things set up already, so I'm going to right-click, go to properties, and take a look at my day energy rules. Now, the rule properties in every rule group look like this. You've got group mode. The rule group will fail when any included rule fails. That means even one. The rule group would fail when all the included rules fail. Or you can test the rules as if they're not in a group, and I've done so here in this rule group. Another property of the rule group is when the rules become available. The rules in this group are always tested. You can only use the rule group in the automatic scheduler. Therefore, when you go to edit the logs in the schedule editor, the rules won't show up. You could also do the exact opposite and have the rules only available in the schedule editor. Now that might come in really handy for those of you who do a lot of manual scheduling and pre-scheduling, maybe some specials, twofers, song of the day, things like that. Also, their rules in this group are never tested, and I'll explain why you might want to use that later on. And these are day rules, and you can time restrict any rule group. It's just like day parting a song in MusicMaster. You can have all these different day parts just like you do anywhere. I've got day rules picked out here, and I'm just going to take a look at it and explain. We have a blank area here. This is where the rule group is active. Wherever there's an X, the rules do not apply, unless, of course, they're not in a rule group. So here we go. We've got our day rules. I'm going to cancel out of this. Another option that you have in the time restriction area is you can test against plays in any time period. There's more. You can ignore failures outside the time period, or you could ignore plays outside of the time period. Now, I don't want to get away from this particular rule group and what I'm trying to achieve here, but you might want to use this in individual categories if you're trying to get things to schedule freer on the weekends, like ignore the weekends. You would do that. Another thing we can do is pick specific categories in the rule group where the rule group is applicable. So, of course, in my rule tree properties, I had turned off my A's. Let's see what categories are applicable for this rule group. I've got new gold, gold, and power gold. Those are the only categories that these rules will apply to. I've got my currents, they lay down, then my recurrents lay down, but I only want a couple of rules for my recurrents, and they're mostly inside the category like rotation rules. And then I've got everything else wrapping around it, which is why I do this. And then so that's why you would restrict whatever categories are involved in the rule group. We also have something with clock restrictions. I'm going to get into that in a later rule group. Right now, in a filter also. I'm going to get into that in a later rule group. We're going to go down a list of rule groups and scenarios. This is the day parting part. So with day rules, understand anything outside of the rule group is 24/7. If you need it to be inside the rule group, you can drag it in. Look at the difference in how this looks inside a rule group. It indents. So if you want the artist keyword time separation to be 103 inside the rule group in the day rules, and you want it to be something else at night, you would put this rule inside the rule group. I'm going to take it out, and you can see it goes back out. So indent the rule group. The night rules, I've got some different energy rules, and I'm going to go to the properties, and the rule group is pretty much set up the same way. Test the rules like they're not in a group. The rules are always tested. These are night rules. Test against plays in any time period. We're going to take a look and make sure I've got this time restriction set up right, though. Now I've got 6A to 6P with X's, and it's blank overnights and in most hours of the evening. However, I have the 9 o'clock hour X'd out. So these rules do not apply to the night rules. So right now, in the 9 o'clock hour, the only rules I have applying to it are the unbreakable, all categories outside the rule group. There's no rules yet for the 9 o'clock hour because these have an X in the 9 o'clock hour and these have an X in the 9 o'clock hour. So I'm going to go down to this rule group and show you another way to control where a rule group is active. I'm going to right-click on it. Let's go to Properties. I've got some different group modes. Rule group fails when any rule fails. They're always tested in this rule group, but I don't have a time restriction. There's nothing going on there. So how do I control the rule group in MusicMaster? I simply, type in the clock code. I know in my 9 o'clock hour, Monday through Sunday, I've got clock LV. It's my love song show. And so I don't need to put a time restriction in there for that. I just put LV. If I want the LV clock to be someplace else, I can put it in other hours, and it would also be tested. So that's how that works. My categories for the LV are just the new gold, gold, power gold, because those are the only categories in that specific clock. So pretty much I have to put all my rules for these categories other than rotation rules in this rule group. So I put sound code. I've themed all of my love songs. And so I have a min-max quota per hour rule within here. And I say I need 100% love songs in this particular hour with this particular clock. Makes it very simple to quickly say, I want this to do a specific thing. So if you have a 70s at 7 show and you have everything coded as a 70s, and you could go, instead of doing a min-max quota per hour in a number, and this is where we're looking at rule properties today, I put a percentage of elements in the time period. I want 100%. I don't want anything else in this hour. Ignored record types, non-music. Of course, you don't need to test non-music because it's between the records. It has nothing to do with the sound. So you can see here I have totally different sound code rules, energy rules, roll rules. Everything is different for this specific rule group. I'm going to break some of these down and make some room up here. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you, or almost the last thing I wanted to show you with rule group properties, is the filter. Now, I've got something I want. I have this idea in my head. I don't mind Mood 1 songs in Morning Drive. I just don't mind them. But I don't want Mood 1 long songs allowed in AM Drive. So I have coded all of my long songs in sound code with a specific character and said anything over 3 minutes 45 seconds has a long song code. Now, what's different here is the filter. The rules in this group only apply to records that match what I don't want there, okay? So I look at the filter, and the mood equals 1. This affects no other mood code, just the mood 1. So we'll go here. Which categories are affected? Just my gold categories. I really don't want to restrict my A's and B's. So I don't care if there's a long 1B. I don't care. I just don't want these golds. And I want some long, epic journey, one mood song in Morning Drive. So that's how you would modify this. And what rule goes in there? Long songs over 345 are not allowed. So it's not allowed in AM Drive, and it's not allowed if it's over 345 because it's got that code. So that's how you use a filter. And I'm sure you could think of many, many different ways to use filters for this specific thing, but this is the one I use for an example. Now, for the rest of the day, I've got my overall sound. So I like to think of the all categories area as sort of my canvas, and I'm the artist, and these are my paints. And this is the sound of my radio station on a general basis. So I put all my sound code rules up here, and I decide which categories they're going to apply to. So I've got all hours except 9 p.m. because 9 p.m. has their own hour, or their own rules. And I've set this up pretty much the same as I've set up all my other rule groups. Just these 3 categories. And I've got the time restriction. The 9 is X'd out. So you can, instead of putting rule groups in every single category with all the different rules in them, you can actually just tuck things up into the all categories area. It certainly makes it easier to work with at the end of the day when you're trying to adjust your rules, when you've maybe changed categories, changed the size of a category, the consistency of a category. Now I'm going to go through and talk about the actual rule properties in the MusicMaster rule tree, because there's a whole slew of different properties you may not be aware of, and if you set up a rule wrong, even though you've got the rule in there, the properties may be incorrect, therefore causing the rule not to work at all. So we're going to talk about some of the things that you can do with rule properties. And I'm just going to go down and I'm going to talk about, okay, in my format, I have several types. I've got a format superstar type, all right? I've got a min-max quota per hour of minimum 20%, maximum 30%. I'm going to go to this rule. You can, of course, use a number. A lot of people use a number. I want a maximum of 3, a minimum of 2, or something like that. You can also use percentages in MusicMaster by selecting that. I like this because I like to use library analysis a lot when I'm setting up a rule tree, because if you set up rules that don't fit your library, of course you're going to get unscheduled positions and you're going to run into trouble. So if I go into type on my active library and go to my library analysis, I'll see my format superstar. I have 28% format superstars. I've got 55% mid-range artists and then just about 10% no-name, never going to happen again type artists. So what I want to do is make sure I don't get clumping of any of those specific art or those types. So what I've done is I said, okay, I want a minimum of 20%. That's the low end. And the high end, I don't want ever more than 30% format superstars, because I don't want to run out in the next hour or in hours down the road. When I'm scheduling, I want to make sure it's nice and evenly distributed through the day. But I don't want them to clump either, so I put another rule in there, title separation. Now, the rule properties on this look a little bit different. We've got tested record types, and I'm going to go back to this one here. We've got ignored record types in this one, non-music, okay? Tested record types on this one. So you could see how important it is to make sure that you set this up right. One says non-music here, and the other one says music. So make sure what you want to test in tested record types is there. Because if you do this, and you have, say, a song, and then a jingle, and then another song, and you don't have the jingle coded, it's going to ignore the rule. So you need to make sure that you select these carefully and think about them when you're doing it. And I just want a title separation of one record. Now, in many rules in MusicMaster, especially segue rules like this, we have a rule cutoff. And I'm going to explain real quickly. The hour marker. When you select the hour marker, let's say with this specific thing that I've got going on here, title separation of 1 in format superstar, if I cut this off at the hour marker, the last song that's scheduled in the hour could be a format superstar. Hour marker comes up. Next song could be a format superstar, even though I've indicated I want a title separation of 1. So that's pretty self-explanatory. We also have record type, okay? You can cut the rule off at non-music elements and at music elements. You wouldn't want to do that, so let's just not do that at all. You can do an elapsed time cutoff. So I want this rule to reset every 30 minutes, and I just put 30 minutes in there. Now with the sweep and the break elements rule cutoff, I'm going to show you a clock, and I'm going to explain. I've got a clock here, and I've got 2 sweep markers. If you want to know how to get a sweep marker in your clocks, you have to double-click on the description of the element, and you'll see this. If I take this off, the sweep marker will go away. So I'm going to click this on and say OK. So the rules will be tested between the sweep elements. So this could be format superstar, non-format superstar, format superstar, non-format superstar, non. Now, I don't have the rule for non or whatever, but the next song out could be a format superstar if this last one was a format superstar if you cut the rule off between the sweep markers. Now, the break elements cutoff works a little bit differently. In MusicMaster, we have log notes, and they would consist as a break element. If you selected break element here in the properties of this, okay, like that, and go back to your clock, and you say, my break element has 15 seconds here, that would be a break element that would be active. The one up here with no length would be inactive, so the rule would sweep through there. It would test the next record. If it has any measure of time, it will stop if you have break element selected in the rule cutoff. That was just to explain that. So to recap, hour marker, sweep marker, break element, you need a measure of time in there. The other thing in the clock that time markers act just like hour markers when it comes to the rule cutoff. It won't cut off because time markers by default have a 0 runtime, and you can't add runtime to a time marker. So you can put those in there and not worry about the rules cutting off there. Now, there's a couple of rules in MusicMaster that you can use and sort of rethink the way you've done things. We have a title separation rule right up here. I only want one in a row. But we have the maximum and sequence rule also. So if I want to say I want just one of these in a row, this would be perfect. Maximum and sequence 1, minimum sequence separation of 1. If I wanted to time restrict a code, I would say I don't want, say I want a 15-minute or 3-song separation. Instead of putting the title separation rule in there, you can just say this: maximum and sequence 1 record, minimum sequence separation 3 records. I'll stop this at the sweep marker and I'll ignore non-music fine. Okay. So that's just another way of looking at that rule. Going down to another rule that is a lot of people use, sound segue protection. It's a segue protection box. A lot of you are very familiar with this. This protects records by 1 song. The unique properties in this, of course, it has the rule cutoffs, but we can test forward and we can test backward as well. So if you lay down all your A's and your B's, and then so the R's come out in the schedule, automatic scheduler, and a B is in behind it, it will test backward as well as forward. You can ignore record types, non-music. You can say, I don't want to ignore anything. I want everything tested. So you've got these different selections. Now, a lot of people, especially with gold-based formats, a classic rock is a notorious format for this particular rule that we're coming into: artist, keyword, hour, rotation. Some unique properties in this one. This tries to protect the artist next day not playing in the same hour. Okay, so 10 o'clock hour to 10 o'clock hour, 11 o'clock hour to 11 o'clock hour. You can go back a couple days and try to move the artist. Say if you have, 45 Led Zeppelin songs, which so many classic rock stations do, you don't want them coming up in the same hour every day. You would try to use this. You would use this rule. You can only test past days instead of looking forward. If you schedule a lot in advance, you can go back into the schedule editor, and it would just test the past days only. You can also ignore individual keyword settings for this rule. And individual keyword settings are where in MusicMaster. You go here and to the keyword editor and go to your artist keywords with the hour rotation rule, and I've got this little keyword called Alanis Sound, 2 days, 1 hour. I'm going to close that out. So these are the hour rotation rules. These are time separations, and these are hour rotations. So this is keyword hour rotation, and if I wanted it to ignore that 2 days, 1 hour, I would just say I want to ignore it, or I would leave it blank, one or the other. It's your choice. The rule properties and a lot of these rules are basically the same, the ones in this specific rule group. So I'm going to move down to the next rule group. And this rule group is a little different than the others as far as the properties are concerned. Why would you not test a rule group? Because you don't want to test them. You save them for Christmas or some sort of special weekend, your 2-for weekend or something like that. You can apply some different rules to it. So before the weekend happens or before Christmas happens, you can store the rules in a rule group and turn off the rules. So I've got some rules in here, and a lot of people that call me and call my associates here and your other music scheduling consultants at MusicMaster, a big question is, especially new users, what's the difference between a day offset window and a play offset window? Let me explain. A day offset window with this setting, checking back 1 day, and it's protecting 1 hour. So if the song played at 10:05 today, it would protect the 10 o'clock hour tomorrow, okay? Not 9:59, not 11:01. It would protect the 10 o'clock hour. So it could play at 9:59 even though it played at 10:05 the day before. So you can test past days only on this rule, and that's one of the only property on this specific rule. So day offset windows are typically used for smaller categories that rotate rapidly. So if you have a current category and you get 5 or 6 spins a day and they play every day, you might want to use a day offset window just to protect that a little bit. The difference between that and a play offset window is if you have a larger category and you're not sure how many days it's going to be till this thing comes back around, you would probably use a play offset window. So here's just a very minor example. Place to check 1, window size 1 hour. And we've got another property in this specific thing. Of course, we've got the test pass days only. We also have a max days. And let me explain why you might use a maximum day. If I didn't have a max days in this specific rule, turn it off. And say Christmas Day, I played the Hallelujah Chorus, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir at 12 noon, okay? Next Christmas, if it tried to schedule at 12 noon, it would fail if you don't have max days. So make sure with the play offset window that this rule has a cutoff of some kind, and you can look at your turnover of your category and determine kind of what the max days might be for this. So, think about what your category turnover is and think about how much leeway you're willing to give it, and, just give it a time to cut the rule off so it can reset and a song doesn't get stuck in eternity and in oblivion. Check your zero plays with your history browser and see what's going on there. Other rules that are they're kind of cool. I've got some sweep targets. I've got target rules in here. And I'm using my energy as an example. And I've got a 1 through 5 energy in my database. And I have decided that I want a 3.2 hour average. And how did I come upon that? I can move this up and down, and it's fun to play with. And you can move the tolerance. So the higher the tolerance, the more difference there could be as far as the hour target is concerned. I'm going to bring it down to a reasonable level and say OK. You can also ignore record types here. Now, how do I decide a 3.2? Again, I use analysis a lot. Library analysis, look at it. I've got 31% medium low, 28% normal, 23% medium high. So probably I'd want to err on the low end of normal to kind of get everything to play, but I didn't want it too low, so that's what I put there. Now, if you're asking too much of your rule tree, if you're asking too much, say your average song is a 2 and you're asking it to go here for your hour, you're going to get into trouble. You're going to run out of songs and you're going to get unscheduled positions. So just be aware of that. It needs to fit your library. Now, there's a difference. We have hour target. Well, let's sweep target. In between those sweep markers, you can control your average as well. So that's kind of a fun rule. It's very visually appealing to a lot of people. It's fun to play with, and you might as well try it out and see how it works for you. I'm going to go down into, we've already done min-max quota per hour rules, but we haven't touched min-max step. Now, all these rules I'm pointing out to you have different properties, so it's important that you understand what the properties do. This has a new box. Okay, it has test downward step only here. The minimum step, maximum step. Okay, I have 5 values for my energy, 1 through 5. I want a minimum step. I want it to step someplace. I don't want it to be the same, okay? I want a maximum step of 3 because I don't want a 5 going into a 1 or a 2. And what I can do here is test downward. I can test upward. So if the step is up, so it's going from a 1 to a 5, I could do that, or I could test all transitions. I choose to only test the downward step only. If it goes up, I'm not really concerned. I'm really concerned about the big train wreck going from a 5 to a 1. So let's get the party started into My Immortal by Evanescence. That would be a train wreck to me. I wouldn't like that. And I'd only want it to test forward. So that's just how I would set it up. Everybody has different, and it's all subjective. This is how I set up my database. Now, between min-max step and min-max max record sum, we have another property here that you can look at. Records. How many records you're testing? You can, it's the sky's the limit. Most people test 3 record sweeps. It's, I don't know, it's something that goes back way to the 80s, and I don't know whoever thought of it, but they were pretty smart. So you can say, okay, of my energy, In a 3-song set, I want my minimum value to equal 6 or maximum value to equal 10 in my specific database. Everybody's different. Some people put 5 and 14. It just depends on how you've got your database set up. And ignored record types. Let me see here. I'm going down list. This is pretty well just cut and dry. Don't allow a combination of records within the hour where the average of the values in this field are outside the specified range. So you don't want anything outside this range. It's very cut and dry. Now we've got some different, we've got a numeric field rule. And where was I? So score. I've got min, max, hour, average, and I've got sweep target as well. So I test my records, and I want the average to be what? I would look at library analysis and determine what I want my average to be. And then I would set this, and it would try to schedule with that. A few other rules I wanted to look at are a lot of people ask about favored pattern and disallowed patterns. I don't want this to happen. I do want this to happen. And this is one way of doing it. So I have 5 values in my moods, and I have decided what I would like it to sound like. So, well, you know, I've just laid out some patterns, mood 3, 2, 3, 1, 3, 5, you know, and I go down the list and I put that in there, and I cut this off after 30 minutes and let it reset. So those are your properties for that. Disallowed patterns, you can set up as many of these patterns as will fit, but I've set up 7 in each one of these examples. These are things I definitely don't want to happen. I don't want a 2-2-2. I don't want a 2-2-1. I don't want a 2-1-1. I don't want to bum everybody out. So I do this, but I've screwed this one up. Ignored record types, none. This rule would not work if you have non-music between each record. So I would want to ignore the non-music. So I've screwed that one up, but that's okay because I did that on purpose. Media time separation. We have text rules, and this is for a text rule. Now, time separation in media would be like if you had CD numbers. If you're old school and you did things by hand and actually put CDs in CD players, you wouldn't want like a TM Century disc, you know, XYZ going up against the same disc the next segue. So this is what you might use text rules for. Of course, if you had CDs for commercials and jingles and stuff like that, you would only want to test the music. So you have that selection. Going through, I've got some shift rules here that I wanted to talk about and talk about the properties in the shift rule. The shift rotation rule is kind of cool because you can almost use it like a play offset window. To me, I would use it as a play offset window. I've got a shift editor here. We can look at the shifts. I've got 4 shifts set up. These are Arbitron shifts, and you can set up to 9 shifts in your database. I leave the overnights blank because I recycle my gold categories, so I don't want that shift to count as a shift. Now you can count each other shift only once or not, and you can play the song in a different hour than the previous play in the current shift. So if it plays in shift 1 today and 3 days later it comes back to shift 1, it's going to force it into another hour, sort of like a play offset window. 1 play, 1 hour. So that's kind of a cool thing instead of a built-in play offset window for you there. We can also test past days only and then have a maximum day cutoff so the rule doesn't hang you up and get things caught in oblivion. Hard to schedule songs. Now, I'm very excited with our next release, our next service release, and I'm not sure when it's going to be out in MusicMaster, SR16. For those of you on SR15, you're sitting here looking at a beta version of SR16, which we've been testing thoroughly. We have a shift pattern rotation rule. I'm going to reset it for you so I can show you. It's very cool. So you look at your shift editor and you decide what kind of pattern you want. 1, 3, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever. So I'm going to set up this one, 1, 3, 2, 4. And I'm going to cut it off after 3 days so it can go back to regular. So it just starts the rule over again. But this is I think it's going to be a very cool rule for especially large categories, gold-based stations that are trying to get the stuff to move in a certain way through the day, because it's tough with some of these, especially classic rock and active rock, where you're really deep into artists, AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, and you've got a few from one artist and a bunch from another. These shift pattern rotation rules should help you out a bit. Now that's pretty much it for rule groups in the all categories area. I'm going to go ahead and jump into an individual category. Okay? Now remember, I had no rules going on for my recurrence anywhere in the rule tree. No rules so far. So I had to put all the rules that I wanted in here. And I put a couple of rules in here that you may want to talk about. Artist keywords, adjusted time separation. And a lot of people don't know what that is. And I didn't know what it is when I started working with it. But so at the top of my rule tree, I have an auto separation of an hour 3. I want this rule to go 75%. I'm going to go look, and I'm going to put an hour 3 in here. It automatically adjusts and says, okay, I need a 47-minute artist separation rule in this category. Okay, so this category gets a timeout from that hour 3, 47 minutes, just in case of artist conflict between current and recurrent. So that's how that works. So if you need help setting that up, if you want to try it, you can call your music scheduling consultant, and I'm sure they'd be glad to help you out with that one. Sliding day offset window, exclusive day offset window, or day exclusion mask. What should I do? I really don't know what to do. Let me explain the sliding day offset window. And for example purposes, I'm going to make this a little easier and just give this a 5-hour window size. The day offset window protects that hour, so within the hour marker. The sliding day offset window will protect that period of time. So if a song schedules at 10:15, it will look around that quarter hour, would go around. So with this specific rule, I'm sorry, I've got a little bit of a cotton mouth here. I can test past days or not, but what we're going to do is look on either side of the 5 hours, 2.5 hours. So if it played at 10:15 today, tomorrow it could play, it can't play at 11:15, it can't play at 12:15, it could play at 1 o'clock ahead. Behind, it could play at 7:45 because it can't play at 9:15, it can't play at 8:15, it can play 2.5 hours either side of the specific time of the spin. So that's the difference there. The exclusive day offset window is something that you might want to use for a Sunday morning jazz program or a Saturday special program, whatever you are into, whatever you're doing. You can check back exactly 7 days, so it ignores all the other days before it, and it'll move it to another hour. But this is like a day offset hour, so the 10 o'clock to the 10 o'clock, the 9 o'clock to the 9 o'clock. So you might want to up this a little bit. Now, what should I use, the exclusive day offset window or a day exclusion mask? I've set this up to mirror the exclusive day offset window. These are very fun to play with, the day exclusion mask. You can test past days only. That's your property. So here's today's play. 7 days from now, it's going to move it 1 hour either side of today's play. Keep in mind just the hour marker, 10 o'clock to 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and so on and so forth. So this is how this day exclusion mask appears. Now, I've seen people fill these out, and they're very fun to play with and fill out. This is what I'd like to happen. But in reality, that would scare me. If I saw that, that would scare me, especially if it was an unbreakable. So I'm just going to cancel out of that. I don't want to save that. But the day exclusion mask can replicate day offset window. It could also, and you could combine, like if you had day offset window 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1. You could set up the day exclusion mask instead of having all those different rules in your folders. Now it's 1:40, and we've gone through 40 minutes of intense looking at the properties of the rules and rule groups. Now, the rule groups in the all categories area and the rule groups in individual categories area are just a little bit different. If you look here in the properties, this category area is not available in this rule group because it's in an individual category. So it really only applies to this specific category, which is why I say put your sound code rules up on the top of the rule tree, okay? Because the category is going to be testing against itself with sound code, and unless you play a bunch of these back to back, well. So I set this up. A lot of people call me and say, Marianne, I really want, Monday through Friday to ignore what happens on Saturday and Sunday and vice versa. So I just set up these rule groups to show you how to do that. Weekdays, it's all good during the weekday. Ignore plays outside the time period. And then the exact mirror opposite. Weekends. It's only going to pay attention to the weekends. It's going to ignore plays. Period. And the different rules I put in here, I put a nice little sliding day offset window in the weekday rotation and a minimum rest. And then I have, for the weekend rotation, exclusive day offset window of 7 days. And then, split that in, half, 3:30, and then exclusive day offset window 1 day, so Saturday to Sunday. So I protected Saturday to Saturday, and I'm protecting Saturday to Sunday. Shift rotation, I think I want to go to another shift, okay? Max days, 7 days, shift editor, here you go. So it's not overkill. And a slightly different minimum rest on the weekends, because I like to relax things on the weekend. Everybody's relaxed, right? Now another rule, I've got some other rules set up here in MusicMaster that I wanted to show you. We have Optimum goal scheduling in MusicMaster, and if you are not familiar with how that works, or if you're a traditionalist and you're kind of afraid to use these, you can use these in conjunction with the other rules. It's okay. So basically what it's going to do is take these rules, it's going to adhere to these rules. Optimum hour exposure means it's going to run through the search depth all the way and back up to the best possible choice at that moment in time. You can also enhance that with optimum quarter hour exposure. So if you feel like a song is ending up in the first quarter hour all the time for no reason at all, and it's just kind of fluky, put this rule in there. It'll move it to another quarter hour. It should, and it probably will. Optimum shift exposure, it's going to try to go through as many shifts as possible before it comes back around. It may not be all the shifts, but it's probably going to do a little better than one shift. And the same with optimum keyword quarter hour exposure. Great for classic rock, great for active rock, and formats with deep artists. This quarter hour exposure rule, use it. It works very well. So you don't get 7:15 Led Zeppelin today, 7:15 Led Zeppelin tomorrow. It moves it to another quarter hour so people aren't confused that they think they are hearing the same song over and over again on their drive into work. So pretty much that's it as far as the use of the rule groups and rule properties. Now, I was asked to discuss when should you use the rule wizard in MusicMaster. Well, you should use the rule wizard whenever you change categories, move things around, delete songs, add songs to categories, add categories, or you're getting a bunch of unbreakable positions in your schedule editor. Run the wizard. He's going to tell you pretty much what's going on here. He's telling you, I've got clock hour timing. I put that in the rule tree only for fun, so to show you. But it's telling me what I've done. Title, keyword, time separation, too relaxed, too relaxed. You can go a little further. It's telling me that my currents might need an auto kick, which they don't because I know exactly how they're laying down. You don't have to pay attention to the rule wizard. He's just going to tell you mathematically what's happening. My sliding day offset window in category B is off just a smidge. It only caused one imperfect song, but I want to see what the wizard is recommending. I'm just going to double click on it. He changed it. It kind of goes right to the rule when you change it. Sliding day offset window, instead of 1 day 5 hours, he's saying 1 day 4 hours 30 minutes. Not much of a change. I think I'm going to stay there so I don't have any problems in the future. But you can use the wizard, and you can use it frequently. Every scheduling session, you can use it all the time. It's okay. It just makes it, he fine-tunes you mathematically as to what your settings should be, especially if you make new categories or add a bunch of songs from a specific artist. You're going to need to check the wizard, and check the wizard also in your keyword editor. We have a wizard here that will separate your artist properly. So use the tools that you've got in MusicMaster because they're really awesome. Now, another thing that I wanted to discuss that I missed in my last session on the rule tree was filtering the rule tree. When you open the rule tree in MusicMaster, sometimes it's just overwhelming. You look at all this stuff and you go, I don't know what I'm looking at. All I want to see is my minimum rest. So I go to minimum rest and song history rules. I right-click on it and filter it. Isn't that a beautiful thing? Just your minimum rest rules are up there. So you could see if you have some duplicated rules or not. You can see exactly what they are in each specific category. Notice I don't have a minimum rest rule for my currents, and I don't want one, so that's fine. Turning on and off the filter is as simple as clicking on the little tree with the lightning bolt. And so you can do that with a number of things. So I'm going to go to an attribute field, and I'm going to go to maximum and sequence. I'm going to filter this specific rule. And I see I have a duplicate rule, my day rules and my night rules. So in essence, I turn off the rules, and I could go, you know what? If they're the same for those three, or for those for the two rule groups, why don't I just pull it out of there and put it in 24/7? It doesn't need to be in a rule group. So you could leave it in if you have duplication of rule. You can leave it there, of course, or you can just pull it out. I would leave it in because I've got slightly different rules for my love songs, so I'm going to leave it in there. But they are the same exact rule. And the filtering of the rules also provides a real quick access, easy look, and see what's happening in your rule tree without getting overwhelmed by everything else. Now, to wrap things up today in the rule tree, there is the print option. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can print your rule tree. You go to the printer. You can print only the selected tree node. So if you have your cursor on a specific node, you can print that. You can print the entire rule tree. So if your consultant says, you know, Joe, I need to see your rules, but I don't have MusicMaster with me. Can you just fax them over, or you can just email them over to me? Just print the rules. So you can print the visible rule properties. You can print the whole entire thing. And I'm going to do that right now so I can show you. If you have a PDF printer installed in your computer, that's an easy way to email printed materials from MusicMaster. I'm just going to go ahead and print very quickly. It doesn't take long with this specific computer. I have 8 pages of printed material here, and that's going to give whoever's looking at it plenty of access to everything, including the grids. And you can see exactly what the segue protection rules are, in what folders they are. So that makes it very simple to, print them out, take a look at what you got. Maybe you can rethink things one page at a time. You can, if you don't have a PDF printer, keep in mind you can always copy page by page, copy the page and take it over to Word and paste it onto Word, and you pretty much get the same thing. You just have to go page by page to do the copy paste. So printing the rule tree is quite nice, and it looks nice, and people appreciate it when you send it to them. And that concludes my session right now. I was wondering, did anybody have any questions at all? And if you do, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. So I appreciate you all tuning in today and watching the Rule Tree webinar, Advanced Rule Tree. I'm 5 minutes early, so Jill, I'm going to give it to you right now, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Marianne. Appreciate that in-depth look at the rule tree. As Marianne mentioned, we already have archived on our website a look at the rule tree in general. And she also, right now you can see on her screen, you can see she's got the Optimum goal scheduling section open as well. We actually did a specific session just on Optimum goal scheduling. So we've got lots of stuff available to you on our website with the webinars to look at the rule tree. This will be now the third look at things there in the rule tree for you. And if you do have any questions, certainly let us know. You can contact your music scheduling consultant directly, or you can email us at support@mmwin.com. Coming up in the next few weeks, we'll have some more in-depth looks. As a matter of fact, we're going to go back to library maintenance and dig a little deeper there as well. We'll be looking at the various fields in MusicMaster. Different fields do different things. How do you pick the right one? You have to know what they all do first, so we'll be looking at that. And coming up next week, if you do any kind of special set scheduling, that could be 2 for Tuesday or 3 for Thursday or any other kind of special set kind of programming, I encourage you to join us for Paul Zeno's presentation. He'll be looking at all of that, including all of the different options available to you when you set up your special sets. We'll have the links for those coming up on our website soon, and of course today's webinar will be posted soon as well, so that you can watch again or have other people in your building take a look. All of that stuff archived on our website. And just again a reminder, if you have any ideas for things that you'd like us to cover in the webinar, talk to your music scheduling consultant, let them know, or drop us a note at support@mmwin.com. Have a terrific day, everyone, and thank you for joining us.